Let's talk about a true giant of industry, General Electric. You know, the company founded by Thomas Edison himself. For more than 100 years, they've built the heavy-duty stuff that powers our world. But then, around 2009, they ran into a new kind of challenge. And it didn't start with a bigger engine or a better turbine. It started with an absolute flood of data.
How much data are we talking about? Well, try to wrap your head around this number. 1 terabyte. That's how much data a single one of GE's jet engines could generate
on just one trip from New York to Chicago. Think about that. All that information from just one engine on one flight. For GE's CEO at the time, Jeff Immelt, seeing that was a total light bulb moment. It forced him to ask a very, very important question.
And this was it. This was the question that kicked off one of the most ambitious and costly transformations in GE's long history. How do you take all that raw information, all those ones and zeros, and turn it into actual real-world profit?
Now, to really get why this question was so critical, you have to understand where GE was at that moment. Yeah, they were still an industrial powerhouse, but under Jeff Immelt, the company was honestly struggling.
I mean, just look at the activity here. Immelt was making huge moves, buying and selling businesses, shuffling hundreds of billions of dollars around to try and refocus the company. But for all that action, the results just weren't there. The stock price was lagging way behind the market, and worse, their profit margins got squeezed, dropping from a healthy 25% all the way down to 14%. The old way of doing things just wasn't cutting it anymore.
So, what was going wrong? Well, it really came down to the two ways GE made money. First, you have the big one-time sale of a product, like a jet engine. That's good, but the real gold mine? That was in the long-term service agreements, the CSAs. These contracts were way more profitable and actually made up 3/4 of GE's entire order backlog. The big insight was that the real sustainable money wasn't just in selling the machine. It was in guaranteeing it would run perfectly for years to come.
And that brings us right back to that 2009 aha moment. Immelt realized that the key to making those service contracts even more valuable, the key to the future, wasn't better hardware, it was software.
He put it very bluntly. This wasn't just a new marketing slogan or a side project. No, this was a mandate for a fundamental shift in the company's DNA. GE, the ultimate maker of things, had to become a top-tier software company.
The grand vision for this shift was called the Industrial Internet. Now, it's super important to understand this is not the internet of social media and online shopping. This is about embedding sensors in massive critical machines. Think power plants and locomotives, connecting them all, and then using powerful software to analyze all that data to make them run better.
So how does it actually work? Well, you can break it down into this simple 5-step loop. First, you gather all that data from the sensors. Second, you put it all in one place, on a common platform. Third, you use analytics to find patterns you'd never see otherwise. Fourth, you build predictive tools to forecast what's going to happen next. And finally, you act on those insights to optimize everything. It's a cycle. Learn, predict, optimize, and then learn some more.
And what was the size of the prize for mastering this? It was absolutely gigantic. One study predicted that by 2020, the market for this would be worth 250 billion euros every year. When GE saw that number, they knew they couldn't just dip their toes in the water. They had to go all in.
So if you're going to go after a market that big, you need a serious tool. You need a digital weapon. GE decided to build their own, and they gave it a name, Predix.
And they were not messing around. They planted their flag right in the heart of Silicon Valley. A pretty bold move for a 100-year-old East Coast company. And they hired over 1,000 software engineers and data scientists. Their one and only mission? Build Predix.
So what was Predix exactly? The best way to think about it is like an operating system. Kind of like iOS for your iPhone, but instead of running apps, it was built to run an entire industrial company. It had to handle an insane amount of data, be incredibly secure. We're talking about protecting power grids here. And really importantly, it was built to be open, so customers and other companies could build their own applications on top of it.
But look, you can't sell something that complicated by talking about cloud architecture. You need a simple, powerful pitch, and GE's was brilliant. They boiled it all down to this three-step promise for their customers. We will help you get connected, get insights, and get optimized. Simple, clear, and focused on the value. Of course, GE wasn't the only one who saw that €250 billion prize. Oh no, this set the stage for a true clash of the titans, a strategic battle between two very different kinds of companies, each with a very different argument for why they would win. The whole debate really came down to this. You had GE's argument, which was bottom up. They said, hey, we built the jet engine, we built the turbine, we know the physics, our hardware knowledge gives us the edge. But then you had the pure software giants like IBM and SAP making the exact opposite, top-down argument. They said, we don't care who built the machine. Our expertise is in the software that can optimize the entire system, not just one piece of it.
But here's where it gets really fascinating. This whole argument, it had happened before. Go back to the 1990s. IBM, under its legendary CEO Lou Gerstner, made the exact same bet, that combining its hardware and software expertise gave it an unbeatable edge. And what happened? Their stock went on a tenfold tear. So while a lot of people were debating GE's strategy, there was a powerful, very successful precedent for it.
And that brings us to the final leg of this journey, an epic quest that was making real headway, but was also facing some enormous challenges. The outcome was anything but certain.
And let's be clear, this wasn't just a dream. They were getting tangible results. By 2016, GE Digital was already pulling in $6 billion in revenue. The goal was to get that to $15 billion by 2020, a number that would have made GE one of the top 10 software companies in the world. The ambition was just massive.
But the road ahead was filled with some serious obstacles. I mean, for one, if your software makes an engine last longer, that customer might not buy a new one. That's called cannibalization. They also had to retrain a huge sales force used to selling hardware to now sell complex software solutions. They were in an all-out war for talent with Google and Facebook, and they realized they had to partner with everyone, even their direct competitors, to make it work. And then, just as things were getting really interesting, came the plot twist. In June of 2017, Jeff Immelt, the man who started it all, the architect of this entire digital vision, suddenly announced he was retiring. Just like that, the main character of the story was gone, leaving the whole quest hanging in the balance.
To really wrap our heads around the final question here, we need to know one key term from the world of aviation: rotation. Rotation is that critical moment during takeoff. It's the exact speed when the plane finally has enough lift under its wings to break free from the runway and actually start flying.
And so, that leaves us with this massive cliffhanger question. With Immelt gone and a new CEO taking over the controls, had GE's enormous digital bet finally reached rotation? Was it airborne, on its way to success? Or was this incredibly expensive, ambitious plane still just speeding down the runway, with no guarantee it would ever truly take flight?